Good morning, everyone. How are you all doing? Did you have a good night last night? I hope you were here till really late last night. I tried to get out, but it didn't happen. I ended up fixing my slides in bed till last minute. It's the usual thing. So we're here to talk about the advanced Playwright techniques for flawless testing. It's really good to see so many people here because testing is something that people don't like doing. People complain testing is hard, it takes time, they couldn't be bothered. So to see people come at 9 o'clock in the morning to watch a testing talk is amazing. So a little bit about me. I'm a senior technical PM at Microsoft. My name is Debbie O'Brien, for those of you that don't know me. And I'm an international speaker, YouTuber, teacher, open source contributor, and I absolutely love sport. I would have previously put a photograph up here of me running before every conference talk in every country that I visited. But my life has changed, and now I'm literally, I brought my twins with me for those of you that have not seen them. This is my first conference since they were born. They're 8 months old. And I wanted to bring them as well because it's really hard to be a woman in tech. It's really hard to be a new mum in tech. And what do? Because, sorry guys, but it's true. For the men, it's easy to just get on a plane, come and go to a conference, but for a woman, it's a little bit more harder. So I wanted to kind of bring them and also make a point of why shouldn't women be able to bring their babies to a conference? Not obviously the boys to sit and watch the talk, but just to be here and be able to be a speaker and a mum at the same time. So if your wives, girlfriends, partners, cousins, or anything are female software developers and are new mums, tell them, come to conferences, because we need to fix the diversity in conferences. Okay, that's enough about me. I'm super nervous because this is my first talk since they were born. So let's go and dive right into it. First of all, what is Playwright? Does everybody here know what Playwright is? Yes, good. So you have come to the right talk. That's great. For those of you that don't know, is there anyone who is new to Playwright, never used Playwright? Okay, there are a few of you. Okay, that's good. I will cover a little bit of the basics in the first 5 minutes, and then I'm going to jump on to some more advanced stuff, okay? But Playwright is basically for reliable end-to-end testing for modern web apps, right? And it can run on any browser, so you can test across all browsers. On any platform, so whether you're on Mac or Windows, but one API. And it's full isolation, so you don't have to worry about tests jumping from one to another, cleaning up between them, anything like that. It's very, very fast as well. So those days of testing and you're sitting there and you're kind of going, I'm going to need to go have a coffee while the tests are run. Well, those days are gone. There's no more coffee anymore. Your tests just run really fast. So sorry about that. It's got some very powerful tooling, which we'll go over a little bit of that as well. And it's multi-language. So is there any JavaScript, TypeScript developers here? Yeah, good few of you. Excellent. Any .NET developers? Yeah, the majority. Any Java developers? Oh, I'm sorry for you. Any Python developers? Yeah, cool. So this works on all of those languages, okay? But I am going to show you the examples are in TypeScript and JavaScript, but the majority of things I show can be done on any of the other languages as well, okay? So take that away with you. There are some differences, of course, because with JavaScript and TypeScript, we built the test runner. We can basically modify and do things, whereas with Python we're using PyTest, and Python has a great test runner, so we're not going to build another one, right? And C# has MS-Test, NextUnit, etc., and Java has its own. So basically there are differences, but the majority of things work across languages. So why should you use Playwright? Basically for various reasons, such as you can auto-wait for elements, so you can retry assertions, you can easily test iframes, shadow DOM, it just works. There's nothing needed to be done for that. You've got parallelism as well, so tests run in parallel by default. Sharding just works out of the box. You can just shard across different machines. And then we've got all these tooling, such as the VS Code extension. Anyone using VS Code? Cool, excellent. I know there's some probably Visual Studio users as well. We don't have an extension for that, but VS Code extension is very, very good. CodeGen. I'm going to show you a bit of CodeGen in a second. That's for generating your tests. And then you can just pick a locator very quickly. You've got UI mode. UI mode is only available in JavaScript and TypeScript, but it's just a nice way of working while you're developing. HTML reports as well. And you've got the trace viewer that works across languages to see a full trace of your test, which is really easy for debugging. And GitHub Actions just works out of the box, which means if you were to just go and install Playwright and just create a test and just submit it to GitHub, with the out of the box, what you get, it's just going to work, right? The tests are just going to be run on pull requests without you having to do anything. The GitHub Actions just comes with it. So I'm going to actually just play this video and talk in the background. so that basically you can kind of see how easy it is for those that are new to Playwright. If you've used Playwright, this is very simple to you. We're basically just going to record a new test, right? I'm going to click on the record new button from the VS Code extension. It gives me a test file. It's set up the test file, and it's already put in there the test block, the imports, and everything I need. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the browser window, and I'm going to put in the URL that I want to test. So you could give me any URL that you want in the world, and I will just go and write a test for you in a matter of seconds. So we're going to test here. We have this little toolbar at the top, because we added this. If you've used Playwright before, this is kind of newish. You can now add assertions. You can now generate assertions, which is something we couldn't do before. In my previous talks, I was always like, just stop here and put a break and then come back and add an assertion. Well, now you can generate assertions. So you can see I've just navigated to the website just by going into the URL. Playwright's added that await page.goto for me. And as I hover over every single element on the page, you can see the locator for that element. How Playwright finds an element on the page is by using locators. So these locators, for example, get by text, and you can see as you hover over those ones. And once you click on it, it will then add it to that test file. So I'm going to click in here, and this is the get by placeholder, search for product. I'm going to search for an Xbox, and you can see here it's added this to the test file. Get by placeholder, search for product, click, I'm going to fill it, and then I'm pressing. So all those actions that the user is doing. Basically, I'm not writing any code here. This is CodeGen that's generating this code for me. And I can continue with my test. Basically, what is a user going to do? They are going to buy an Xbox controller because they want to play games. And we can add that to the cart. And obviously, it's no fun playing on your own. So let's go and add another one. So you can add 2 in here. You can add it to the bag. So again, what a user is doing. And Playwright generates all this for you. Look at that. This is kind of cool. What do you think? Have any of you used the generator? Yeah? Yeah. Is anyone using the generator already? A couple of you, not many, right? So you should all be using this because it is a really quick way of getting started. And as you can see, I can then, generate those assertions now. So I can just come along here and I can click on whatever assertion. There's only 3 assertions available because we cannot obviously add everything, but it's a really good start. And you can obviously then go and modify that. But this one here, assert that element contains the text of 1, because that shopping cart was built with a text of 1. And I want to make sure there's 1, even though there's a quantity of 2, there's 1 product, right? And if you kind of change it, you can see that it went red there. But I can accept that 1 is the correct number. And I'll go ahead and add that. And I look, await, expect page, get by label cart to contain the text 1. So that's really cool. So if you're a new developer and you're like, I don't really know testing very well, I don't really know what to do, this is a great way to get started. I'm not saying this is like the only way and the best way, but if you're getting started, this is definitely the best way to get started. Okay, so you can continue along and you can use all the other assertions here. This one is assert text or assert value. So you can see what's going on by hovering over it. And you can see right here, this one has a value. Because as I hovered over, underneath it, it gave me the locator. So then I knew I could assert that one. So I'm going to assert the get by text quantity 2, because I want to make sure there's 2 controllers in there. So now I've got to await, expect page, get by text quantity 2 to be visible on the page. Right? So this gives me a really good way of understanding what I need to do. Okay. And we could just literally use this website as a user would and assert that whole user flow from start to finish. And we could write a test, I'm doing this really slowly, right? But you could be really much faster. And you could write a test in a matter of 3 minutes, right? And if you don't believe me and you think but this is pre-recorded and it is pre-recorded, you come to me later, give me your website, and I'll go and write your test for you in a matter of 30 seconds. Okay, excellent. So this is my test. Now, always, you've got to run that test, see if it passes, okay? Because it might pass, it might fail, because sometimes you might have double duplicators on the page. Playwright needs to be an exact locator, right? So you can't have, if your cart was empty twice on the page, Playwright wouldn't know what to do. It's like, which one do you want? I don't know what to do. It would crash. It would time out is the correct word. So once you have generated the test, make sure you run the test and then see if those locators are the right ones or modify them to improve them. So this is my test, and obviously, because I'm a great developer, the test is going to pass, and it does. And this is the trace viewer that I was talking about. So you get a full trace of your test, which means you can go back and forward in time just by hovering over each step of the of the test that you wrote or that CodeGen generated for you. And this is a DOM snapshot in the center. And you can visually see what's going on. You've got the action before and after. You've got a timeline at the very top. You could scroll that along to make it go faster. And then you've got all these other things, the locator, the call, the log, the errors, console, network, source, attachments, all of this as well. So this is really good for debugging, okay? Forget videos. Videos are rubbish. You don't want to be watching a video. It's just, no. You want a DOM snapshot where you can go and inspect that. That has a, that's full Chrome in there. You can just inspect that DOM and check if that CSS class is hidden or what the developer did. So that's CodeGen, right? Now, if you're still not convinced and you're saying, yeah, but it can't do everything, and you're right, it can only generate certain things. Well, you've also got GitHub Copilot. And this is me just playing around with GitHub Copilot chat. And I went, add another test that adds 2 to-dos and marks both as completed and checks that both to-dos have the correct CSS class. Right? CodeGen couldn't generate that, but I want Copilot to see if Copilot can do that for me. And look how fast Copilot is. It's insane, right? Anyone use Copilot? Yeah, most of you. That's cool. Anyone use Copilot chat? Not enough. Not enough. Got a few people, but not enough. But play around with it. Look at this. There's my, expected to have class completed. And then I went on and said, how can I just do less work? Add a before each and then move the creation of the to-dos to the before each hook. And it went do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do, and it went, and that's really fast, and you can't follow it because Copilot's so fast, but it literally put all my to-dos, like the to-dos that I created and the page.goto, so I don't have to repeat that, and I put that in that before each hook. So that's really cool. And I was like, what else can I do here? Well, Copilot, move all tests into a describe block. That's just, I could make that myself, but let's just get Copilot to do it. This is easy. And I'm not even typing here, I'm just speaking. So I'm just talking into Copilot chat, and it's just bang. And look at that, it's insane. And then I can literally copy this over, put it into VS Code, and there's my beautiful describe block, my test up before each, and the 3 tests, and they all pass. It's fantastic, isn't it? That is the future. That is how we should be developing. I know it doesn't do everything always correct, and sometimes Copilot will find things that you kind of go, that's not the right, that's not the right locator, that's not the best locator. So you always need to check your code, right? Don't let Copilot do all the work and you just submit a pull request. But use these tools to your advantage because they are very good, and we do not realize how good they are and how much they can do for us until we start playing around with the prompts. You have to be clear. I had to tell it to use the right locators, because if not, it gave me CSS class locators. And I'm like, no, that's no Copilot, that's not what I wanted. So you have to tell it, right? It's a computer. It doesn't know what you want. Cool, so that's the kind of intro, right? If you're new to Playwright, now you've seen all the cool things. Now we're gonna dive into some tips, some API mocking. We're gonna go over testing data time, how to use setup tests if you're setting up a test login, for example, before other tests. Some CLI stuff, and some scaling if you have really large test suites and you want to run at scale. How do you do that? So hopefully there's a little bit of something for everyone here, and let's dive into it. A couple of tips. So really, really important is to use locators. You saw how I was using locators that are user-facing. What does that mean? Get by role button. A role is like an area role, so you want to make sure that you're using the role of a button because that's what a screen reader will read. So you're also testing your accessibility. Previously, many, many years ago, and people are still doing it today, we used to use XPath and CSS. That was many years ago, that was okay. Now that's not okay. So don't do it. If you really are stuck and you really need to, and sometimes there are times we have a get by data test ID as well that you can use, that's great. Sometimes you do not have access to the code and then you're stuck, and then you're like, what do I do? In those scenarios, you might have to, your filtering might not work, and you might have to use an XPath or CSS, but in general, your developers here, make sure your code is great, make sure your HTML is good, and make sure you're using accessible role-based locators, because it really does make your life easier. You change your CSS, your tests are going to work. You change your HTML, your tests are going to work. Use Playwright's assertions, okay? So these are auto-retrying. And what that means is that when we write an assertion, expect the page, I'm using the get by test ID of status to have the text submitted. It's going to auto-retry. So when that test ID, that status is not ready, it's going to keep trying until the JavaScript is loaded, everything is ready, and then, or it's going to time out because your JavaScript is really slow. It's always the JavaScript's fault. So yes, so make sure you're using the auto-retrying assertions. If you just use the normal assertions like just style to be, it's not going to wait. and it might pass, and then tomorrow it might not, and you'll have some flaky tests. Annotations, this is really cool. I don't know if is anyone using annotations? No, what are annotations? I like that, That was a great question. Annotations are a way for you to add extra information into your HTML report of your test. So when your test is run, you could write in here, you could put your pull request, or it could be a Jira ticket, or it could be anything else that associates it with that test. And that just kind of helps later on when you're reading that report, this test failed, and maybe there's a reason. So in Playwright, we attach all our issues to all our tests. So we can always go back and forward and kind of just click on that. They're clickable and they're inside the test. And it's really easy. You just put in here annotation, and then you just put in a array, and you put in the type. I'm calling it type issues. If you call it type my issues, whatever you want to call it. And the description is your link. It's clickable. Or you could just have some text in there. This is a really bad, I don't know, whatever, right? So you could put in links or tickets or whatever you want in there. So that's annotation. So do check that out and do start using that. It's really cool. And then you can also use test steps. So you can actually, like say you have a big, long, like I was creating to-dos in there, okay? There were 2 to-dos. It's really small, but imagine there were 15 steps in there, 15 to-dos, right? Well, you could just do await test.step and put them all into a step. And you might say, well, why do I need that? It kind of looks okay in the code, but it's not really beneficial. But in the HTML report, then I have like a nice clearer vision of all the test steps, and I don't really care about what's inside that create first to do. I just want to see it created the first to do, then it did that, then it created the second do, then it did that. And obviously it's expandable, so I could just expand that and then see everything in that. So that's your test steps as well. So kind of really cool to use that as well. And then you can box your test steps as well. So you can just put box true at the end of your test step, and that just basically puts it in a box, right? Like, what does that do? Basically what it does is when there's an error, and there's an error in the step, sometimes you're getting this error here, and you're getting like 2 lines of errors, and you're like, I don't know what's going on here. It's not pointing to the right thing. But by using box steps, it basically tells you what it's done. So the error was in the get by placeholder, and it points you to the right part that you need to look at, which just makes it easier. So that's just box steps. If you're going to use steps, check out box steps as well. Cool. Any questions so far? Yeah. Because not everyone uses steps. So, not everyone uses steps, but yeah, it's a good question. If you're using steps, maybe that should be the default. Maybe, but it's not. So you got to manually do it. But good question. Okay, let's move on to some API mocking. Now, this is always a question like, but you shouldn't mock your API. Should you mock your API? Should you test your API? It depends, right? There are times when you need to use the API. There are times when you cannot, where you have to mock the API. And there are times where it doesn't make sense because you're going to be hitting that API all the time. So API mocking is a decision that you need to make in your company. Should we mock the API? Should we test the API? I'm going to show you, if you do want to mock, what you need to do. So here's just a very simple test here. And what I'm doing is I'm mocking a fruit, and I don't call the API. So I'm basically going to my root, so wherever my API call is. This is a simple example. It's just using GitHub, right? It's got a JSON file with a load of fruit in it. And I'm basically saying, go to the root, and then this is my JSON instead of going to that API. Whenever you try to hit that API, don't go there, and put that JSON in there instead. Okay, and then I just root.fulfill, and I get everything I need. So my fruit here is Playwright, okay? Obviously there's no fruit called Playwright, so that's how I can easily see that it's working as expected. And then I basically expect the page heading to make sure that fruit is there for Playwright. I threw a wait for request in there just for the images, just so I could see the image, but it's not really necessary. So my test passes, great, and I can use various ways of seeing it. The trace viewer is my go-to for making sure everything works. So I go into my trace viewer, and I've got my Playwright fruit. So it works, and you can see the page.root there. You can see the root was fulfilled, and I can go and into the network tab as well, and just check that it actually did do everything it was meant to do, and actually go and fulfill that route instead of calling it. Obviously, in this example, it's really easy. There's no Playwright fruit, so it's very easy for me to see that it actually did go and fulfill a route. Okay, so that's really, really simple, really easy to do. Out of the box, just works. Look at that, malloc get. We got our fruit, status code 200. response, and if we click on the body, we should get our lovely Playwright fruit, which is what we put in our test, okay? So that's really, really simple to do. And there we go, Playwright API mocking. Any questions on API mocking? I'm going to show a couple of other things, but go ahead. So can you extract the what we're calling in the JSON here into something else? So this is, yeah, I'm not sure. I've never tried that out, putting it into a fixture, but it's just the JSON. So I'm guessing you can, because I'm just filling it with that text in there in the test. So why not pass something through? So definitely play around with it, but I'm sure you can. So this one here, I'm just testing that something is there, right? And you can see I've got my fruit JSON fulfilled, and I put in Debbie, right? So you can actually modify, you can also modify the API call. So in here, I'm basically adding to that JSON, right? I'm going to say, I've got my name, I'm lost on here. What am I doing? There we go. The next test gets the JSON from the API and adds a star rating to it. So this is a scenario where, say, the backend developers haven't done their job yet. Right? I don't know if that's ever happened to you. I like to write my tests even though things aren't finished, right? I'm a front-end developer. I write my test, but I'm waiting for the back-end developer to get the API and add this new feature in there. We've got a star rating to our fruit to rate those stars, and the back-end developers haven't done it yet. So this is a great time to kind of just mock that up and test out how that would look like while I'm waiting for that API to be ready. And I want to see, like, do my test pass, and then I'm just going to obviously change that test to actually really call the API and not mock it out. But this is what I do in kind of development mode, and you can see now I've got my star, I can see that it works, I can see it's checking for those 5 stars. So this is kind of just my way of doing it, where I just add to the API call and add some extra stuff in there, and then create those, create the rest of that code. And you can see fruit.stars equals 5,000. You can play around with it, and you can see that that's going to now fail because there are not, how many is that? 50,000? There are not 50,000 stars, right? So it's also good to kind of make sure your tests fail as well, kind of play around with it and see that it works. And you can see, I can visually see that it's there. Okay. You can monitor all requests and responses, so you don't actually have to modify the API. You can just monitor that it's actually calling the API, and you can see everything here, the 200s, and just put that into your test and kind of see that that's going there as well. Cool. Any other questions on API mocking? Is it pretty clear? Pretty good. Is anyone using API mocking? Yeah, one person. 2, no, 1. Wow. Yeah, you have a question. Go for it. Do you have the same in .NET for API mocking? That is a great question. I have not tried that out. I would have to open the documentation and actually check to see, but I don't. It's about route handling, so I don't know, but I'll check back with you on that answer later. Okay, cool. So let's move on. No other questions on API mocking? We're good. Anyone think yes, I'm mocking the API is a good idea? Yeah, good few people. Okay, cool. Anyone think mocking the API is a terrible idea? Only one person. Okay, he's a hardcore backend developer who has a great API. It depends, but great, cool. If you need it, it's there. Okay, another thing that you can do is testing date and time. Has anyone ever needed to test date and time? Yes. Have you found it difficult? Pain in the ass. Love that. Yeah? Okay, well, let me tell you that it was a pain in the ass until literally about a month ago. And then we made it not be a pain in the ass. So here is a website, a very simple website with basically a clock on it. And did I press play? There we go. So I've got a timer just going down. So it's a very simple website. Now, not server. This is browser-based, okay? So we can't test what's on the server. For clock, we have to test and go and mock or modify what the API in the browser is giving us. So here's my simple clock, right? I start a clock function, get today equals new date, and I'm just putting it on the website. And this could be a countdown timer for anything that you're doing. And this is like my test here, and I'm basically I'm using page.clock, that's our new thing, page.clock, and I'm going to the website, I'm using set fixed time. So I want to set a fixed time. So new date, whatever that time is in there. And then I'm going to my website, and I'm expecting the page to have the time of 10 o'clock, because that's the time I set. So very simple, using the trace viewer, I can go in there and I can see that the time is set to 10. And I can, check that everything is working as it should. So this is very simple. I can look at the call, and I can see the time that I recorded this was 4 p.m., but yet it's 10 o'clock there, right? So that's how we can easily, see. So the log will, or the call will tell you the time as opposed to the time here. Now you can manually advance time, which is really cool. I would love to manually advance time. Just fast forward and just go to the party. Yes. But in your tests, you sometimes need to fast forward time because things take, I don't know, maybe this login thing. You're logged in and you want to test that the log out comes after 5 minutes because the user has been inactive. So you want to fast forward by 5 minutes to make sure that message comes in. So there are kind of times when you want to fast forward. You don't want to sit there for your test waiting for this to happen, right? So you can manually use clock.fast forward, which advances the clock by jumping forward in time. It only fires the timers once. So here we can run this test, and you can see it's very, very simple. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, and then I'm go and fast forward to 10 o'clock, and then fast forward to 10:30. And obviously in between that, check this something is there. And I'll give you a kind of a little better example here. Here's my countdown timer, right? 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes to purchase this. This happened to me on Amazon. I was buying something and it's 20% discount, but you got 5 minutes to do it. And I'm I need to buy it, right? And they lied to me because then I refreshed the page and then I got it again. So if you refresh the page, this will kind of just restart the timer. But it does happen, but you want to test that the offer has expired, and you just want to get that 5 minutes countdown to really, really you just get me there, right? So you're using clock.install. That's initialize the clock, and then just go to that timer page, and then expect the flash offer to be visible, and then fast forward by 5 minutes and expect the offer expire to be visible. So very simple test, but now it's super easy to do. And here you got in the trace viewer, you got your 5 minute countdown, and then the flash offer is visible, it fast forwards, and you've got your offer expired visible. Okay, so that's just some really cool things you can do with the clock API. Yeah, go ahead. For a session cookie, it's using kind of new date and things like that. So whatever you can do, whatever you're doing in JavaScript, new date, all that kind of stuff, then yes, I'm not sure on sessions, is that using the same? I don't think there's a connection between it, but you could definitely check it out or see if it's using the clock somehow. I don't know. I'd have to see the code to see it, but definitely check it out and check the docs. The docs tell you all the kind of everything that you can do. It gives you what it can do. Session cookies, I'm not sure. Yeah, go ahead. Well, you can do localization settings anyway, so you could literally go into test.use and language, German or Danish or whatever, or geolocation or whatever. So you can do that anyway. So the clock will then just pick up what it's in that kind of test. So generally yes, but it doesn't have to be in the clock. It's the actual test that does that. But good question. Cool. I will move on. Setup tests. Okay, anyone using logins? Now, I'm going to give this, and you're going to say this is terrible because I'm testing a very simple login, right? I'm not going to tell you how to log in with OAuth0 and Google and all that kind of stuff and Azure and all that, right? This login is really, really difficult, but sometimes you have a very simple process that you can do. I'm using a login here that's a really simple login just to show you how to log into a test and then run the rest of those tests. But this could be another scenario. It might not be a login. It might be, I need to do this test, and these 20 tests depend on this test. I want to set up this test for whatever reason. So my example is using login, and it's basically just going to log into a website, and it's going to check that the menu of that logged in user exists. And now we do this using project dependencies. So this is JavaScript, TypeScript only, I'm afraid. So here I'm using storage state, and I'm setting up my test. I'm making sure then that I've logged in and it's saved into storage. And then I've got my my menu test that just tests, my name is testing login, right? It should be Debbie or it should be whatever, but this is just what I called myself when I was playing around with this website, and I just test that it's there. And when I ran that test, you see how it runs the do login test first, and then it comes along here, and then it runs the menu. So it knows I need to log in first, so I'm not going to run that menu test until that login test has run. And you can see here, I have logged into Wikipedia, and I basically have my whole menu there of logging in, and that works as expected. So it's a really, really easy way here, and I can uncheck the setup test, right? Because I have storage state and everything done. If I uncheck that storage state, or uncheck that setup, I can run that test again, and that do login is not going to run again. So when you're developing and you're like, I don't need to run the login every time, I just want to run that test. You need to run it once, it's saved a storage state, and keep developing, and it's going to like know that that's already saved, and I don't need to run that again and again and again. So that's really saving a lot of time. That's pretty new, this setup, again, so make sure you're updated to the latest version of Playwright, because 4 months ago that wasn't the case, and you would have to have run that again and again. So this is kind of a really nice way of doing this. And this uses project dependencies. So I'll show you this in a second. Is anyone using project dependencies? No. What? Only one. Project dependencies is really, really cool. OK, I'll show you in a second the Playwright config, so you can understand this a little bit more. So here's my, my menu test. And I'm just showing you that if I run this here, it's going to fail, because I haven't ran the login first as I set that up, okay? So check that setup again, run that menu test again. It's running the login test. It depends on that, and then it goes and runs the menu. And here's my login test. I'm logging into Wikipedia. I pressed all that login stuff, and then I went ahead and I did everything I needed to do. And that's my menu test here of just checking. Then the trace viewer is great. Is everyone using the trace viewer? No, 1, 2, 3. Come on, you need to be using this trace viewer. This is great. This is available in all languages, okay? It's just different setup in Python, etc., and in C#. So these are your project dependencies. So you've got projects, and you put name setup, and you say dependencies, right? This test, the E2E test logged in, or I could call it whatever I want, the Debbie test, the menu test, depend on dependencies of setup. And then they use a storage state, and basically everything that's in here depends on that. So if the setup test failed, your login didn't work, then all those 25 tests that depend on that will not even run. They just won't get run. So you're not going to like spend loads of time running all those tests, okay? So it's really cool because it saves a lot of time. Projects are what we call in Playwright projects, like you'll see if you've ever just installed the default. A project is Chromium, WebKit. A project is not just a browser, right? Project is whatever you want it to be, because here you can use that use geolocation, that use the language, the local language. You could use viewport. You could put anything in here, not just Chromium, etc. So this is project dependencies. Again, sorry, this is only JavaScript, TypeScript, but this is really, really cool for setting up tests. OK, let me talk about last failed. So for those CLI users, this is really, really cool. Anyone using last failed or the CLI to run tests? Anyone use a CLI in general to run tests? OK, quite a few of you. Yeah, I'm a UI person. I like buttons and beautiful and stuff. But I know some people like to live in the dark and just type and everything works and just, yeah. So this is for you. This is for you CLI people. So last failed means if you're running npx playwright test, you're going to 103 tests, 2 failed, right? 101 passed, and you go and you fix those tests, right? And now you could do like, a grep and put the file name in and just run that particular file name. Or you could basically just do npx playwright test -- last failed, which is just so much easier, so much nicer than having to, grep or know the file name. You just want to run the last failed tests. And there could be like 20 last failed tests, right? So it's much nicer this way. This is really cool. Now it's only going to run the 2 tests that last failed, and now they passed because I fixed them, so fantastic. So yeah, really nice last failed. Now, even better, only changed. Is there anyone using only changed? No, this is really new, out of the box, like literally released 2 weeks ago or something like that. So only changed is, again for CLI, only run test files that have been changed since the last commit, right? So you do your git status, you're on your branch main, you got your changes, not staged for commit, the only changed example, right? I run npx playwright test -- only changed, and it runs 1 test using 1 worker. So only run tests from the last change. Here's a little demo to make it easier for you to see. So I've got like install. I'm going to change to installation. Okay, I'm going to run my test. So I'm going to npx playwright test. And it's going to tell me that there are 8 tests using 5 workers, right? So this is pretty quick, but imagine you have 80 tests, right? Now you do npx playwright test -- only changed, and it's going to run 1 test, super fast, right? Because that's the only test I changed since the last commit. Okay. Now, there's a lot of things you might say, like, this is like watch mode. This is very similar to watch mode or using test.only or just in the VS Code extension pressing the green play button. Yes. But think about this on a CI kind of, right? Now, I'm going to go and change my branch. I'm going to create a branch called only changed. It could be feature. It could be shopping cart. It could be whatever. And I can go in here and I can basically run my test based on the difference between a different branch. Okay, so let me just do a git status. I can see I'm on branch only changed, and there's changes not staged for commit are these changes. And then I can basically say, right, I've got this feature, I've created it, and I want to, before I do that PR, I want to just make sure I'm not going to break anything. So I can first commit those changes to my feature branch, and then run my test using npx playwright test. And then I can say -- only changed. And here's the difference here. I can do equals the branch that I want to go against. So here's, I'm doing only changed first, which is no test found. We're fixing this error message because it's really kind of like, it's not no test, it's just no tests are changed. So that will change, okay? But then if I do only changed main, I have 1 test passed. So now I can say, right, against the main branch, 1 test has passed, or if that failed, I'm like, I'm not going to merge my changes because they're going to kill me. So you can kind of like play around with this a little bit between feature branches and other branches. So that's kind of really cool. Now, don't look at my commit messages because they're terrible. But you can basically also get a commit ID and just put that ID in there as well. Don't look at them. I said don't look. And you could say only changed equals and the commit ID. Okay, and then you can go and test against a specific commit and basically say, right, well, that kind of failed, that kind of passed, etc. Now, your question, and I know you're going to ask me, what if you changed a different file? What if you changed a file that wasn't a spec file? Will it know what it's doing? Well, yes, it will. Let me show you. I've got an import here of an attachment name from the utils. I'm using the annotations that I showed you earlier. I've got a type attachment name, right? It's just coming in from a utils file. It's not a spec file, but it's being used in the test. In that utils file, I've just got a const of attachment name, and I've got related issues. Just very basic, just so I don't have to repeat that everywhere. And I'm going to call it my issues, because my issues sounds so much nicer than related issues. And now I'm going to run npx playwright test -- only changed. And what's going to happen is it going to pick it up, running 5 tests using 5 workers. And you're like, okay, cool. 5 tests, 5 workers. Why? It runs every single test in the test file. So if that attachment's in that spec file that's using the import attachment, I have 3 tests in one file, 2 tests in another file, and it's going to run every single test that's inside that spec file. We don't run the specific test only, right? It runs every test in there. So if you have 100 tests in there, it's going to run 100 tests. But it's not running the tests in the other spec files. So that's kind of really cool. Now, why should you use this or should you use this? Don't use this. Don't use this and depend on it as in your, like, open your CI, go to your pipeline and say, right, only changed, and that's it in your GitHub Actions or whatever. Use this as a quick feedback loop. Use this on a pre-comment hook, on a pre-push. Use this locally. Use this on CI if you want to, but not as your main kind of thing, right? There was a really good talk the other day on pipelines on CI. I don't know if anyone's seen that, but you know, you can run, make sure your nightly's running all your tests maybe, and you could run your just PR kind of with only change. So only change, play around with it. It's a really, really cool feature. It's meant to get a really fast feedback loop and help you when you have all those tests. And I don't know, you have a lot of tests to run. Has anyone here got lots and lots of tests? Okay, cool. Amazing. Using my favorite people. The rest of you, you've got some work to do. You need to get there. So I'm going to talk a little bit about scaling this specifically for use, because sometimes you have all those tests and you're like, oh, I need to scale. It's slow. One of the things I'm going to show you is sharding. Anyone using sharding? No. You failed me. Sharding. So when you run your tests in CI, this is just my website, very simple, very basic. It's not great, but my tests take 18 minutes, right? I do a lot of testing, and it's 18 minutes, and it's just my personal website. So can you imagine Volkswagen? Can you imagine ING Bank? Can you imagine Lego? How many tests do they have compared to just Debbie, right? So if my tests are 18 minutes, someone else's tests are 55 minutes. That's a lot of time. So how can you improve that? You can use sharding. And sharding works very, very easy with GitHub Actions, very, very easy with Playwright. And you literally just shard your tests. And if you just go to the documentation, it's a beautiful guide on how to do it. And it's very, very simple. You put in here, and then you're just running test 104, 204, 304, 404. Sharding is great, but also sharding is not the be-all and end-all. Because when you shard your tests, in each of these, I need to download the browser, right? Because it doesn't have access between the shards. So it can add some time. So don't say, oh, I've got 18 minutes. I'm going to shard by 6. And now it's going to be like super. No, because you got 6 browser instances to run, right? So kind of play around with your timings. I found that 4 was good for me. That brought my time down to 8 minutes. But if I did 5, it went up to 9 minutes. So you got to play around with those, okay? And then you can use merge reports. This is really helpful if you're using HTML reporting. You don't want to have like 8 different reports if you've got 8 shards, right? Because that's a pain in the ass, right? So you want to go and have here, you've got one report, and I've got like 292 tests. I've just got one report with all those tests because it merged those in. So that's really cool as well. Okay, those of you that now sharding isn't working for you, it's not enough, and you need to do more, this is where I'm going to talk a little bit about cloud-hosted browsers. Now, this is Microsoft Playwright testing, okay? This is an Azure service. This requires dollars. So you do have to pay for it, I'm afraid, because it extends the Playwright open source framework. So this is on top. This is the Azure team that created this. But it expedites your test runs and build pipelines. You can run your test suite faster and improves your test coverage. So when you're running your tests locally, what's happening? You've got 2 workers, and it depends on how many workers are on your machine, your machine's capacity, right? If you've got a lot of space in there, you can run 2 workers, 3 workers, 4 workers. Every time you run your test, you're going to have workers change depending on your computer, what it can do, what's running in the background and stuff. So here you're using the test runner. You've got worker 1, worker 2, and you've got like your browser instances. Now, that can be really slow, right? Parallel tests are great, but what if you have like all these hundreds of tests? Well, when you run with your tests with the browsers in the cloud, you're not having to install those browser instances each time. So here I've got like 50 workers, and you can have more than that. Just 50 is a number, but you can say workers 50 workers, 50 like little people, doing all the work, right? Running all those tests, and that means I've got like 50 browser instances going, and those tests are being pushed into here to run. So the browsers are in the cloud. We don't have to download that. Downloading browsers is the most time-consuming part of running your tests sometimes. So having your browser in the cloud, you're just running your tests, and it makes it super fast. This is just an example here, and it was like, I don't think I can see it very well, but it's like 600 tests using 35 workers and 2 minutes, 17 seconds. The test took less than 2 minutes to run 600 tests, right, just using the cloud-hosted browsers. So really, really fast, and you get a whole a little portal area where you can kind of see each test run, so you can go back and forward in time, and you can just see like 5 minutes, this one took longer, and you can kind of go back and forward and see how long each one took. And then you've also got reporting. Reporting is new. This is not even fully out yet. This is coming to general availability next 2 weeks, more or less. About 2 weeks' time, this will be available to you all. So when you've got reporting, you can have a full report in the cloud of your tests, and you can basically go through here and see every single test that was run and what project being what browser, in this circumstance, Firefox, WebKit, Chromium, the job that was run, the duration, and then you can even kind of go into a little bit further, and you can see the test steps. And let me kind of zoom in a little bit to that one. There you go. Yeah, the test steps, the artifacts, and you've got like what browser it was run on, all your information, but you've also got that button to view the trace viewer. So now directly, so that was something that was a big problem on CLI when you're running your test trace viewer. You got to find it, you got to download it, save it. There's no dashboard. Well, this is kind of what you need now. So you've got this dashboard, so to speak, and you're able to visually see those traces on CLI or in the cloud that are stored there. So that's Microsoft Playwright testing reporting. That's an Azure team that's built this. That is a paid service. just to clarify and make things very clear, because we get a lot of questions, Playwright is open source and free. Playwright will always be open source and free. You want to test, you can test completely free, no problem. But if you do want to use cloud-based services, Azure-based services, there's obviously money involved, and they are the paid services, right? So that's the Microsoft Playwright testing is built on top of Playwright. It's a separate team. It doesn't mean Playwright is now going to, charge you money. It's not. We don't care. But if you use the cloud, then obviously that's a different story. Anyone here interested in the cloud-based hosting? Yeah, okay, cool. So if you do have any questions about that and you want me to bring you to the right team, or you want to have a demo or a chat with any of them, just send me an email. I'll put my email. It's my name, debbie.o'brien@microsoft.com. Send me an email and I'll put you to those people so they can kind of like talk a little bit more. And I work in the open source part, so I can help you go to that area and get some more information. So yes, Playwright is open source and free. And and the reporting, the service, Microsoft Playwright testing service, is for TypeScript, JavaScript, and C# as well. So yeah, Python, sorry, not yet, but they're working on it. And Java, I mean, there's only one guy, so sorry. But no, everything will happen eventually, but we just focus on what we can. So yes, Playwright, we're coming towards the end. We've got some great ambassadors there who are creating great content, so make sure you check out those. We have a Discord channel. If you're not in Discord, join Discord. That's where we have 13,000 members in there. Everyone's helping each other out. Sometimes you ask me a question. I have no idea. I haven't done that. Someone else has. 13,000 people, one person has possibly done what you're asking, and they are always helping each other out. And there's a articles channel in there and loads of other stuff, and we do happy hour and Playwright Live and all kinds of stuff. So yes, are you ready to Playwright is the question. Thank you very much. These are our docs. Obviously, we are on Twitter, YouTube, Discord, and my email is there, debbiebryan@microsoft.com, debbie.codes for my website if you want to just follow me and do all kind of stuff. I want to say, before you give me this big, massive clap, right, you do have to kind of say if you like this talk, you got to put a green one in there. If you didn't like the talk, a red one. If you're not sure, you can put a yellow one. That's in the box. It's really important because then they'll invite me back or they won't invite me back. But be honest, because also, they need to know the kind of talk that people want to hear. Maybe they don't want to hear more testing talks. Maybe they do. I've also put stickers on the table. Do take some stickers as well. And we do have a few minutes, so if you do have any questions, I'm going to ask you for those questions. But first, thank you. Go ahead. Do we have any plans to extend Playwright to mobile apps? This is a great question, and the answer is no. I am so sorry, and it breaks my heart because I get asked this a lot, but we are a browser-based testing, and this is what we focus on. The team behind Playwright are originally the Chrome developer team that moved to Microsoft and built Playwright. They know browsers very, very well. They don't know apps, right? So if they had to learn how to do apps, we needed to build a whole new team to do that. So it's just not as easy, and we don't have the people. We're open source. Even though we're in Microsoft, we are open source, which means we don't have everything available to us for free. So we can only do so much, and we don't have the team capacity to be able to go into mobile. It's not on our roadmap. It's not something that we're thinking of doing as much as I would love to, because it would cover everything, right? But our team is just not going to happen. So if you do need mobile app, then you've got to use those third-party kind of ways of doing it. You can emulate, and I know that's obviously not what you want because that's mobile apps, but if you need to emulate a mobile, you could do that, but not mobile apps. So yeah, you've got to use another service for that. But good question. Yes? Yep. Well, it depends. So using the locator by text, will it make it brittle compared to a test ID? So if you have, say, get by text submit, right, for a button, we're going to submit a form, and the developer changes that to delete, that's something you want to test, right? That text is important. So that's a kind of a really get by text scenario that's very important. But get by text Xbox controller, maybe they're going to change it to Xbox my controller, then it's kind of maybe that's not as good a text, right? So then you want to maybe use a get by test ID in that scenario. So it depends on what you're testing. You want to make sure it's as close to the user as possible, and you want to make sure that it makes sense, right? If someone changes the name of that product, do you care or do you not care? Because if you care, use get by text. If you don't care, then it's not as necessary to use get by text. So just kind of think of those scenarios, but that's a really good question. Anyone else have any questions? No? This has been an absolutely great session. Thank you so much for coming. We've got a guy from Japan flew all the way over for this talk, so thank you to him as well. No, seriously, thank you all for attending. Annie, I'll be walking around. You can't miss me because I'll probably have a baby hanging out of me. But you'll easily be able to find me. And again, if you're thinking, like, I'm too shy to ask a question in front of people, I totally get that. Just send me an email or find me on Discord or Twitter, ask whatever you want, or come to me later on. This is a great conference. It's a great spot. There's a load of great talks. Make sure you see the line breakers tonight. If you've never seen them before, they are amazing. Do not miss them. Anyone seen the line breakers before? A couple of you. Are they amazing? Yes. Make sure you go. It's brilliant. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you so much for attending, and happy testing.